In this video, I share with you Arcane Season 2. But before we get into today's video, just want to share with you what the GGGGs are for this month. Each month, Bob the Beholder picks some of my Patreon supporters to receive gratitude gifts. And for this month of November of 2024, we have this box of the Ravaged Lands Shattered Storm Vault terrain set. And we have $100 going towards the crowdfunder campaign, which my Patreon supporters are currently voting upon. Go ahead and use the link below to go to my Patreon page where you can find out more information on how you can get in on the possibility of receiving one of these gratitude gifts at the end of the month for only $1. So, I don't do a lot of videos regarding any media, movies, things like that. But every once in a while, something comes out where I just feel compelled as part of nerd culture to share about something that is so good that immediately I would recommend it for you to go see. The two media posts that I've done in the past is the first season of Arcane, and then I also did Godzilla Minus One. Those two things were so awesome that I just told everyone to go see it whenever they could. And it is the same with Arcane Season 2. Now, if you haven't seen my first season review video, go ahead and check that out here because I'm going to be sharing about the first 3 episodes that just dropped this past weekend. My son and daughter and I, we all watched it and absolutely loved it. But you do really need to watch the first season to really know what's going on. And it is definitely worth watching, as Arcane is my favorite, not only animated series, but series period. So just take that into consideration. And after Arcane Season 1 finished up and I heard about Season 2 coming out, I was just wondering and honestly a little bit worried and anxious that they wouldn't be able to follow up with something as good as the first season. Because in the first season, and spoiler alert, I'm going to be sharing about what happened in Season 1. And probably from this point on, I am going to be spoiling just things that have happened, assuming that you've already watched both Season 1 as well as the 3 episodes that just dropped. We're going to have next Saturday another 3 episodes, and then the final Saturday, 2 weeks after, is going to be the wrap-up of the season. And that's exactly the same number of episodes that came out for Season 1. But anyway, why I loved Season 1, and again, from my original video, I had just watched the first 3, so I had not watched the rest of the season, but it ended up even better than I thought it was going to be, because probably my most favorite thing is that it is so well written. The characters are so well written in a way that it is in the likes of character development, similar to Game of Thrones, similar to Blue-Eyed Samurai that came out as well. I mean, there is a level of depth and complexity and moral ambiguity that the characters are going through, as well as the relationships. So from Season 1, obviously it was about the relationship between Vi and Sister Jinx and the conflict that they were having. And then, but even on top of that, you had the relationship with Vander, and you had Silco, which is one of my favorite sort of bad guy characters because he ends up being a father figure to Jinx. And the portrayal of Jinx's mental health issues and sort of mental breakdown is portrayed in a way that is realistic, as well as just artistically with all of the scratch mark crayon drawings over the screen. It just makes a lot of sense, and it's such a good portrayal, I think, of just someone dealing with their own demons, dealing with the pain and hurt of their youth and the fear of abandonment, and sort of all the decisions that are made as things come to a climax in that very last episode when we see Jinx firing that rocket and destroying the council. So that's where Season 1 left off, and I was just wondering, how are they going to top that? And in many ways, I always find that the second season of a series typically isn't quite as good as the first. But if these first 3 episodes that have just dropped is any indication, I don't think we're going to be disappointed. I don't think that's something we need to be afraid of, because we are already so invested in some of these characters. The emotional depth that is found in these story arcs is so deep. I am not afraid to admit that during Season 1, there are a couple of times that I cried watching it because of the tortured relationship. Now, again, not just between Jinx and Vi, but among all of them and just done so well and so expertly. With season 2, all of that remains. Those intricate relationships, the dynamics between them, the way that the storyline resists some of the tropes or stereotypes of characters. All of the characters, main characters that we see, have a lot of depth to them. And in fact, we see a character progression happening where a lot of unexpected turns are going on. And again, if you haven't watched it, just go and watch it because more spoilers are coming up regarding each one of these characters. I think what I was surprised by was that the characters actually do change a ton between season 1 and season 2. And a lot of that is the consequences of Jinx firing that rocket. It was right at the brink of peace, and that just ruined it. And how the council is going to react, how Piltover is going to react to Zaun and to Jinx in particular. I think the biggest turn and obvious turn is our new antagonist is actually going to be Caitlyn. I mean, who would have thought that? And I feel like what's awesome about the whole series is overall it is a tragedy. If you think about Shakespearean tragedy, what really holds the story together is it seems like it's always at the brink of achieving peace or reconciliation, and then something ruins it. And that sense of tragedy continues to happen and really is what shapes and forms the characters even more in season 2, because with Caitlyn and her mom being killed in that blast, she now has this one focused mind in trying to get Jinx. And what's tragic is you finally see, after the hints of it, the storyline sort of playing around with it in season 1 really quickly. I didn't think this was going to happen so soon, but we have the emotional payoff of Jinx and Vi finally kissing each other. But it's done right at the moment and at the time where Caitlyn's hatred of Jinx gets in the way and they have to separate right as they have gotten together. That kind of tragedy sort of is overlaid in all of the relationships that happen within the Arcane universe. I'm talking about also with Victor and with Jace, where Jace just wants to be a scientist with his friend, does everything that he can to save him, and then Victor just sort of walks off and says, we're over. And similar to like how in Breaking Bad, where Jesse ends up being the moral anchor to Walt's sort of going off the deep end of darkness and immorality, in the same way where Caitlyn was the one who was the moral anchor in Arcane season 1, now you have a reversal where Vi is the one who is the moral compass, who is trying to prevent Caitlyn from going down that dark path. So super interesting role reversal that happens between these two seasons. And then Savika and Jinx coming together under the common pain of losing Silco and not knowing what to do now that his leadership is gone and all the infighting that's happening in Zaun. I think that is super interesting relationship that's found there. And then I have to say that Savika's fight with Smish is amazing. And the robotic arm that Jinx creates for Savika is awesome and hilarious. So tons of action that's happening right off the bat. I thought there was going to be more of a slow burn like there was in the first 3 episodes of season 1, where the relationships are more established, but we are thrown into action relatively quickly. There's a lot of resolution that needs to happen between season 1 and season 2 with the implications of that rocket blast. But that's actually done relatively quickly, and we move on to action almost right away. And I really like that. I think the pacing of this first 3 episodes is really, really quick, really tight, and a lot of story and development happens within these 3 40-minute segments. That is way more than I thought was going to happen for the entire season. At episode 3, you have a fight between the sisters, between Vi and Jinx happening, and I thought that was going to be the culmination, sort of the end story. But to have that first confrontation happening at episode 3 is pretty amazing. The arc of Caitlyn sort of becoming this Grandmaster taking over the council with Ambessa's help and manipulations, that happens after the 3rd episode. So a ton of stuff, a ton of movement actually works its way through. And I haven't even mentioned, the Black Rose and their involvement in what's happening with Ambessa and how they might be impacting what happens there in Piltover. So just a ton of stuff that is going on. And again, right here, I just want to say, if you aren't into League of Legends lore, you absolutely don't need it. Although I will say that Season 2 has a lot more Easter eggs and a lot more shoutouts to League of Legends than there was in Arcane 1. So for example, Black Rose, if you don't have any background, you're still okay not knowing what this mysterious political force might be. But because I know some of that lore, when I saw it, I knew right away, and the implications of what that means with future characters. So just know that you don't need to know everything or anything at all actually about League of Legends, or don't even need to play. Although I just love all of the shout outs that they're giving. As a person who used to main Teemo, I loved that they didn't have Teemo in it, but someone with the Teemo hat is one of the characters that shows up. Also, one of the changes with Jinx's character is that she doesn't seem as far off the deep end regarding her psychology and her mental health or breakdown, although some of that is happening. And obviously it was traumatic for her to be the one that killed Silco. But there's a way that she comes to some resolve and resolution, even in that confrontation that happens with Vi, and she thinks that she's going to die. There's some peace about that, or inevitability in her mind about that. So there's a way that Jinx is even developing and furthering who she is, although her character is not good. So there's still conflict there. There's still conflict between Vi and Jinx where, yes, they're enemies, but they're still sisters. And you can see inner conflict between the two of them as the season is going along. So you would think that there would be, at least one of them saying, no, they're my enemy, I'm going to kill them, all that kinds of stuff. You see that. But in the end, that conflict is still maintained, which I think is genius. I think the writers made the right choice by continuing that as a central story arc, is that relationship between those two. Jaime Lannister's character in Game of Thrones, how you hate him at the beginning, and then he becomes like one of your favorite characters towards the end of the series. That kind of character development is really what I love. I love to see sort of unexpected things where you think as the audience, oh, I've seen this before, I know what's going to happen here. But the writers have subverted what our expectations are, and they actually work against those tropes and throw in surprises with how people are making sort of moral decisions. So even the fact that Caitlyn is unleashing the Grey, this like noxious gas and poison, into Zaun to hunt down Jinx, like that reversal of being willing to use gas, which historically has, concentration camp kind of elements or thoughts. You just see her descending into this place of hatred and singular focus on trying to find Jinx, and how Ambessa is the one manipulating her, manipulating the council, all the things that's happening in Piltover. And that's one of the things that I really like, because sometimes, for example, Game of Thrones, you get thrown into this political situation where you need sort of an Excel spreadsheet to figure out which faction is with which. You're just sort of thrown into it. I like how with Arcane, the first season really was focused in on a pretty small group of people and characters. And in season 2, that's really thrown wide open, where the scope of the world, the scope of who's being involved, the political machinations is now beyond Piltover, where now you have the Black Rose and Ambessa and all of that now getting involved. And Arcane itself, the magical force which is being corrupted. We're not 100% sure what is going on, but there's more things happening where you're trying to figure out, oh, what is this magical force? How is it being corrupted? And what are going to be the implications of this? Because it doesn't seem like it's good. So I love how the writers have put in some really interesting plot lines and character development lines where I'm really curious to see where this goes. I can't recommend this series enough. If you haven't seen the first, sorry I spoiled a lot of it, but go watch it first and then turn around and go see the first 3 episodes that have just dropped. Again, this coming Saturday, you're going to get the middle 3, and then finally a week later, the final 3 episodes. So my family can't wait. We love it. Obviously, we love it. We made cosplay costumes. We're looking at different characters to see who we want to cosplay this next spring based off of the introductions that we're going to see here. So can't recommend it enough to all of you. As people in the nerd community, I'm sure you will love it too. If you've seen it, go ahead and make a comment below. I'd be curious to know, do you love it as much as I do? Were you sort of worried about whether or not they would be able to carry through with how excellent the first season was? And what are you hoping will happen next? Go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe. Happy watching. I'll see you next time.